This old PC has been through a lot. There's the 3.5-inch disk drive originating from a 486, which has seen the 4 floppy disks of the original Doom, a DVD drive from 2002, and, as has been very common back then, a dedicated sound card. This slightly newer DVD burner is from beyond 2004, but the case itself is very typical of the millennium years, while the interior has been retrofitted with newer components, which means it's downgrade time.
First things first, let's get rid of everything not needed, like the unnecessary HDD cage, which takes up lots of space and blocks easy access to the innards. And the metric ton of dust makes it plain that 2004 is already a couple of days ago and that airflow was not the highest priority back then. Alright, this looks much better now, but not quite be quiet enough. It lacks the proper coating. From this computer's point of view, it's still more than a decade before the first Be Quiet PC cases sees the light of day. But that doesn't mean that the machine can't also sport the proper looks, on the outside and on the inside. This is it. The very first Be Quiet power supply unit, the roots of our success. The Blackline P4, which hit the market in 2003, got refined and improved in the same year and was republished as version 1.3 in February 2004, earning us an outstanding review score from PC Games Hardware. This here is the 350 watts model with SATA connector, a titanium coated casing and follow-up control for the fans, to which we will get back again later. The K8N Neo 2 Platinum mainboard was top of the range in 2004, not least due to its full implementation of the Enforce 3 250GB Ultra chipset, which made overclocking a piece of cake. Not only could you do everything manually, you could also specify your desired overclocking percentage, and the mainboard took care of everything else. Also, it supported up to 4GB of RAM in dual channel mode with a very high data throughput, which we need for our RAM modules. These are PC3200 DDR RAM modules running at 400 MHz and featuring 1GB each. Regarding the CPU, there was only one logical choice back in 2004, the AMD Athlon 64. At least it was if you intended to get absolutely everything out of your games. Based on the back then brand new socket 939, our chosen Athlon 64 4000 Plus was the cream of the crop. Only the Athlon 64 FX55 was a hair faster. Clocked at 2.4 GHz and featuring 1 MB of L2 cache, this chip ran circles around the competition, despite AMD's usage of 130nm chips compared to Intel's more advanced 90nm technology. Even though the first dual-core chip was still 2 years away, this monster produced a mighty 90 watts TDP. To properly manage this heat, we are going to need a dark rock cooler. And not just any dark rock, the first one from 2010, weighing a whooping 1.1 kg, taking on 180 watts TDP and standing on a fiddly mounting base, which thankfully is now part of a long distant past. Still, this beast was for many users the gateway to a more silent future, as running at a full 1500 RPM produces a mere 18.8 decibels. Admittedly, this number is based on an older measuring technique and would today, with all the advances and enhancement in sound gauging, be slightly higher, but still it's really quiet. Okay, now let's talk about the graphics card. Following the disaster that was the GeForce FX 5800 card, lovingly dubbed the blow dryer, the GeForce series came back with a vengeance in the shape of the GeForce 6800 Ultra 2 years later. For this build we chose the slightly slower Radeon X800 XT, however, for 2 reasons. First, its fan is less noisy, and secondly, it's optimized for Far Cry. creating much higher FPS in that game than its competition. Clocking at 530 MHz and featuring 256 MB of DDR3 RAM, this €500 monster was the bee's knees back then. Following the bleaching of the yellowed fronts of the DVD and floppy disk drives and the necessary wiring, it was time for assembling the system. And in order to be able to take a look at the inner workings of it, we needed to cut out a hole in the side of the case, as Windows side panels were unheard of back in 2004. Unfortunately, our tempered glass window wouldn't fit, which is why we chose a custom-fitted acrylic glass. Of course, we got rid of all the outdated and terrible loud fans inside and replaced them with a couple of our own classics. 80mm first generation silent wings, 2 of each in the front and in the back. They hail from 2010, are PWM controlled, feature fluid dynamic bearings and the distinctive airflow optimized fan blade design. And this is making me a headache just by looking at it. Now that we can actually see inside, everything that used to tangle around freely now really sorta has to be in order. Time for some cable management, which is not exactly a walk in the park due to the unruly FDD and IDE cables. And as we like us some pizzazz, let's also include a bit of LED lighting from the Darkbase Pro 900 Rev 2 using its dual rail fan control PCB powered by the Blackline P4 second SATA connector. And tada! There it is, our very own 2004 gaming PC. And what do you play with this monster? Far Cry, of course, with all of its graphics options cranked up to 11. Oh yeah, this is nice. And all powered by the very first Be Quiet products. Oh, before I forget, I've mentioned the follow-up control before, which works like this. Upon starting your PC, only one of the fans boots up with it, the other one remains dormant for a little while, which in return means that when you power down the computer, the second fan keeps on running for an additional few minutes, blowing out the accumulated rest of the hot air, thus preserving the components.
This computer has been a really nice pastime of mine for the last few months next to all of the other video projects. I hope you like it. If you want to see more projects like this in the future, please leave up a thumbs up or a subscription. Stay cool and stay quiet.